In this video, I will talk about a unique project called Human. This project began the moment a rational human, in other words, Homo sapiens, appeared on the continents where you and I live. Based on alternative research, this human is estimated to be only a few hundred years old. Some will undoubtedly object and claim that this is incorrect, as other sources assert that rational humans have existed for more than 100,000 years. I won't argue with that. However, since I will not mention the previous extinct human races but will only focus on modern humans, it turns out that the period I will discuss is no more than a couple of hundred years. Today, from the colorful television screens that fill many homes and public places, numerous geopolitical experts and strategists are speaking, striving to capture our thoughts and shape our perception of both the past and the future. These professionals attempt to predict what lies ahead for us, and in this process, they often present highly contentious and sometimes absurd forecasts. Understanding the future is a natural desire for each of us, and we all want to know what tomorrow holds. However, many of these forecasts sometimes appear so absurd and contrived that one cannot help but wonder where these experts come up with such fabrications. After all, judging by their biographies, they graduated from prestigious universities and have solid education. Nevertheless, their predictions often fail to stand up to scrutiny and provoke doubts. But there is nothing surprising about this. The essence is that without a deep understanding of one's own past, it is impossible to accurately assess and predict the future. If a human does not realize how past events have shaped their present, it is difficult for them to make accurate assumptions about what lies ahead. How can you make the most accurate prediction about the future if you are reading books that contain fictional narratives? Clearly, this is impossible. To make truthful predictions, one must rely on credible history. This is where modern strategists face a problem. Their predictions about the future are often based on myths and fabricated stories about the past, which makes their forecasts questionable and unreliable. I would like to believe that many understand that humans were created by someone, but who the creator is remains a mystery to this day. We also do not know why we were created. We were placed here at an unknown point in recent history. This recent past can be relatively defined by facts such as the emergence of basic human concepts, love for one's neighbor, compassion, and love for children. All of this officially began to take shape only by the end of the 19th century. Few of you may know that the first Society for the Protection of Children was established in New York in 1875. This implies that until that moment, human society did not focus on the love for children. Are we being subtly led to understand that humanity itself has not such a long history? Could it be that until the end of the 19th century, no one pondered love and compassion for one's neighbor? You might point out that great Greek thinkers, in their lost works from several thousand years ago, reflected on concepts like love and compassion. This is undoubtedly true and indicates a profound philosophical consideration of human nature in ancient times. However, despite these reflections, until the end of the 19th century, there was no consideration of the rights of children or women in society. The society of that time did not grant any rights to children or women, and their status remained extremely unequal. This historical fact emphasizes that the modern human was created by the end of the 19th century. This means that we, as a society, are a relatively recent creation in human history. It is possible that we are not fully aware of many aspects of this development, or perhaps that we are not being told the whole truth about our past and the process of progress. The next stage is the acquisition of knowledge. This step also began at the end of the 19th century. The organizers focused on explaining to the new humanity how the world is structured. This moment is quite significant, as it was at certain places that people were introduced to the understanding of how the earth, the surrounding world, and even how to properly care for newborns were organized. Some might guess. These are the very world exhibitions organized at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th centuries. Interestingly, these exhibitions took place in locations that later underwent significant changes and played a crucial role in shaping history. Imagine that these exhibitions were visited by tens of millions of people. In these splendid pavilions, the necessary worldview was being formed. There, people learned that the earth is a sphere, not a flat surface, that there are continents and countries, that there are different nations, anthems, and flags. They learned about different languages, races, and customs. They discovered technical structures, professions, and positions. They were introduced to politics, police, doctors, and many other things. In other words, people gained the information at these exhibitions that contributed to the creation of the correct society. And the term correct does not necessarily mean good, but rather what was deemed necessary by those who organized everything during that period. All people are almost outwardly similar, but each has their own thoughts. Each person sees the surrounding world in their own way. Undoubtedly, there is some similarity in worldview with one's neighbor, yet each reality is unique. The individual perspective of each person is remarkable, but it does not satisfy those who try to keep the world under control. Their goal is for each individual's view to align as closely as possible with the views of other independent minds. This is why such enormous exhibition complexes were built, featuring paintings, maps, massive globes, Viking ships, and Venetian gondolas floating in constructed ponds. Some pavilions housed factory machines, engines, and locomotives. After such exhibitions, the reality for millions of people changed. Individual perspectives were replaced with the desired images, aligning with the new direction. Just imagine that enormous amounts of money were spent on these exhibitions. Entire cities sprang up within months, but after the exhibitions ended, these cities were ruthlessly demolished. The so-called programmed exhibitions continued until 1930, but programming people did not end there. The disappearance of one form means the emergence of another, more effective and cheaper format of programming. And I'm talking about the video image. The new phase of development using video imaging surpasses previous methods by allowing a global and large-scale creation of a picture and understanding that is considered correct and necessary from the perspective of those who control human development. This method is much more practical, effective, and less costly compared to previous technologies. Today, you can encounter talking screens almost everywhere, showing millions of individuals the correct, approved reality. But that's not all that shapes the consciousness of an individual. The next stage in personality formation is separation and education. This process began in the early 20th century, where in select territories, universal free education was introduced. Notably, every state had its own education system, but at the very roots, they all had a common goal and idea. Judging by today's results, the best technical development was given to countries such as Germany, the United States of America, and the Soviet Union. If you look closely and delve deeper, you will see that these are the very countries where unique minds in physics, chemistry, and mathematics were formed. From these sectors came the best engineers and scientists who created unique theories and technologies. To train a true specialist, it is not enough to simply provide quality education. The brain of each human is unique. What one can do brilliantly may be completely beyond the capabilities of another. Each of us has our own unique firmware bestowed from above. One is destined to become an engineer, another an artist, and yet another a writer. Each has their own unique talent, and developing that talent brings success to the human. At first glance, everything seems simple. Find what you love, develop that skill, and success will follow. But it's not so simple. The creator engineers, while giving us a specific purpose, somehow forgot to tell us what that purpose is. The hardest thing in life is to understand what you are meant for, to find your true path, your hidden talent, which simply needs to be developed in order to become successful. To choose what exactly to develop, you need to get acquainted with dozens, if not hundreds, of disciplines that seem useless to the brain. And only when the brain has tried all the offered informational dishes will it be able to choose one of them. The brain will say, "I like how light falls in optics experiments, what factors influence the movement of celestial bodies beyond the dome, how the electromagnetic field works. I want to understand their meaning." And then the human becomes a great physicist, a great scientist, because they have heard the hidden voice of their mind and decided to study physics as their main subject. In order to raise 1,000 future physicists, it is necessary to make a thorough selection, a kind of intellectual filtration to pass masses of people through a special sieve so that in the end, only a few hundred outstanding talents are selected. This was the principle behind the education system in the Soviet Union, which was unique and bold in its ideas, unparalleled in the world educational system. Ordinary school children were offered to plunge into the study of disciplines that seemed to have little application in everyday life. Algebra, with its complex formulas which are rarely found outside the classroom, organic chemistry, physics. For 90% of Soviet children, these subjects became a real ordeal, almost a torture, burdening the brain with excessive information. And there was some truth in this. For the majority, it was an exhausting intellectual marathon. For the remaining 10%, however, learning was an unexpected joy, a secret pleasure that helped them find their true purpose. These rare school children felt the delight of diving into the depths of complex scientific disciplines. It was they who then chose the path of higher education, entering the faculties of chemistry and physics. But even in the institute, the strict sorting continued, albeit more detailed. Hundreds and sometimes even thousands of students began their journey in science, but only a few, just a small number, achieved great heights, becoming doctors of science, associate professors and full professors, continuing to advance carefully structured scientific thought. In the Soviet Union, one could find thousands of research institutes whose significance at first glance might seem questionable. Millions of graduates worked in these institutions, and most of them did not set grand goals or make revolutionary discoveries. For many, working in an institute was more of a routine occupation, neither too burdensome nor well paid. It might have seemed that these institutes were places of stagnation, where employees were engaged in routine tasks, often without contributing anything new to science. However, this impression was deceptive. In reality, these institutes played a key role in a grand experiment. They were, in a way, vast incubators for scientific personnel. Among the millions who filled their ranks, only a few, literally thousands of individuals, turned out to be true creators, innovators, and geniuses working at the peak of their abilities. These people possessed exceptional skills and sharp intellects, directing their talents toward goals that matched their nature and purpose. It was they who propelled science and technology forward, creating achievements that the world continues to use to this day. It was thanks to the efforts of these chosen ones that nuclear power plants were created, nuclear icebreakers were designed, experimental rockets flying under the dome were created, new horizons in fundamental physics were opened, and much more. All these achievements are the result of the work of that very elite, methodically and carefully selected by the Soviet education system, which functioned as a massive filter, identifying the best of the best. The Soviet Union, with all its institutes and millions of researchers, was not just a place where people ate their bread in vain. It was a vast laboratory where everyday selection took place and genuine talents were cultivated, those capable of changing the course of history and laying the foundation for future breakthroughs. The third chapter of the Human Project, Education and Selection, ended with the 20th century. In the 21st century, the unique system of selecting specialists was dismantled in America, Germany, and Russia. They are no longer needed by the world in such numbers. The 21st century is so rich in technologies. So much has been discovered and implemented in the previous century that today it would be easy to build a world where the entire population of the planet could be fed, provided with free electricity and gasoline, and given warm homes. Everything needed for this already exists. Everything was developed and tested in the 20th century. New discoveries are no longer necessary for a happy life. All of humanity could already live well-fed and happy. Only one thing is needed, a command from above. But that command will never come because the biblical project is a long-term game, and we are now living in the fourth cycle, which can be called the selection of humans. Nowadays, humanity is undergoing a process of a peculiar selection, which can be compared to a sieve. On this sieve, grains are separated into two categories, and perhaps no other option is provided. Every human now faces an important choice that includes many aspects of everyday life. We are confronted with decisions between chemically processed and natural food, between same-gender marriages and traditional family values. In our time, light drugs, vapes, hookahs, and many other things capable of altering a human's original biological state are readily available. Now everyone can choose what appeals to them. Society offers various lifestyles and numerous temptations, including ideas that family is not necessary, that a woman should be independent and not need a man, and that traditional values can be set aside. Ultimately, the choice is left to each human being, and their decisions determine not only their own future, but also the fate of their descendants. We are at a crossroads where every decision we make matters, and it is up to us to decide what our path will be and how it will affect the next generations. The year 7532, a mainland abandoned by the engineers. History is something more than a record of dead events. It is a laboratory of human experience. Philosopher Arnold Joseph Toynbee.
History is a lie, just like the lie that we are forced to learn from early childhood. We repeat and uphold the lie we fall in love with. We defend it and consider it a scientific truth against which it is forbidden to fight. Certain types of knowledge, medications, medical care, and the basic social necessities such as clothing, food, water, and housing are not free. Someone is diligently shaping the newborn into a specific, customizable personality, as it should be according to a prescribed plan. Certain personalities instill specific diseases into the human's body from childhood, and all of this is free. First glance, it seems to you that this is the only way to properly express yourself in a developed society, and it also seems to you that this will help you better understand and adapt to the realities happening around you, here and now. You are teaching the elite prepared lie of that very shadow government, fiercely denying everything that lies right before your eyes, screaming the truth directly in your face. Everyone knows the saying, history is written by the victors, and it is written in such a way as to direct your attention wherever they wish. The Trojan civilization, the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, all of these never existed as they are told. A human was never primitive. It is only now that a human has become primitive because the scale of life's values has been turned upside down. As a result, they have become the first beast with a human face. But those who continue to resist the negative flow of information understand that the earth and everything in it is in the hands of a specific group of people. This group tries to keep many under control, leading the masses to inevitable destruction under impressive slogans. When human consciousness begins to awaken, when a human begins to stand up against tyranny, when a human can no longer be possessed, the elite destroy everything. Nothing remains of what was before. And then comes the time for the creation of new bodies, a new generation of slaves. This global destruction is called a reset, or in other words, a wipeout. And as impossible or absurd as it may seem to you, such a reset happens constantly, at intervals no longer than 200 to 300 years. At such moments, the next leadership begins to change everything, including preparing the lies that the new generation must be taught about what came before them. Look around. Buildings were burned with technologically advanced weapons. Painful wars were provoked. Forests were set on fire. Important architectural complexes were destroyed. Destructive attacks were carried out, poisoning the water, air, soil, modifying plants and animals, introducing diseases into human bodies, all in an effort to reduce the population as quickly as possible. The last reset took place about 200 years ago. Traces of the previous civilization can be seen everywhere, but an unprepared person does not see all of this. Many have undergone programming to ignore it. The truth is not relative, and certainly not hidden or reserved for only a few. The truth is right under everyone's nose, but few are willing to see it. Resets always occur through water and earth, which swallow up everything that is not meant to be presented to the next generation of slaves. As for the rest that survived the ferocious flood and lay hidden in the upper layers of the earth, they were never covered by ancient seas and oceans. This is simply the work of a certain group of individuals, part of the elite of the universe. This also includes the erasure of the memory of all humanity.